About a week ago, maybe a couple weeks ago, I did a webinar. And ever since I did that webinar, I've been inundated with a bunch of questions related to solution-focused brief therapy. And the most common question that people are asking me are things like, what if the client wants something that is either bad for them, like drugs? So, solution-focused brief therapy being about the client's best hopes. What if I say, what are your best hopes from this session? And the client says, I want to continue drinking, or I want more marijuana, or that sort of thing. Or if the client wants something that they can't have. So what are your best hopes from our talking? I want my ex back, or I want a loved one who has passed away to be back. And people ask that question to such a high degree that I realize that there's a huge misunderstanding out there about solution-focused brief therapy. So this approach, it's not really about what the client wants. It's about the outcome the client would get from what they want. So for example, if I'm working with somebody and say, what are your best hopes from our talking? And they say, I want my ex back. I would say something like, and if the ex came back tomorrow, what would you notice about yourself that pleased you? And then they might say, oh, I'd be happier, I'd be secure, I wouldn't be anxious anymore, whatever. And then it's my job to ask future-focused questions that are independent of whether or not the ex comes back or not. So, for example, I'd say, so suppose you woke up tomorrow and you were happier and more relaxed and more secure, whether the ex was there or not, what's the first thing you would notice? And then we do a description about the presence of their preferred future, the outcome, not the condition. If that makes sense. And the same thing is true if someone says something that would be bad for them. I was working with a teenager once, and I asked him, what are your best hopes from our talking? And the teenager said, I want more money and more weed. Well, obviously, as a psychotherapist, I'm not interested in this kid having more weed. So I said to him, and what else would you like? And eventually he said he wants his parents to be proud of him. And then that's an appropriate thing. Another thing you could do is if you ask a client, what are your best hopes from our talking? The client says something that would be bad for them, like weed or alcohol or something like that. You could simply say, and if that were to come into your life in a way that didn't put you at risk of other negative consequences, what would you hope for then? Because then you remove the condition of the negative behavior, and then you just do a description of the positive thing. And after doing this webinar, getting so many questions, I'm literally talking about like a dozen a day. I realize that people get confused. This approach is not about what the client wants on a superficial level. It's about what the outcome the client wants to achieve in their life. And that's maybe a subtle distinction, but it is very, very important to understand. If I say to my client, what are your best friends from talking? And the client says they want a new house, it's not my job to talk to them about having a new house. It's my job about what difference having a new house would make in their life. And that's the difference between an outcome from something or the actual condition. Most of the time, if you ask people what they want, the first thing they're going to give you is a condition. I want a new house. I want a new girlfriend. I want more clothes, whatever. But what we want is the outcome people would achieve from having that condition. And then we have to ask future-focused questions that remove the condition, and that opens it up to the outcome happening, whether or not the condition is met or not. And that really is the magic of solution-focused brief therapy, because then people kind of realize, like, oh, I can't have happiness without this person. It is healthy for me to have happiness without alcohol or drugs or whatever. And then people really start to change and start living life in a different way. And that's what makes this approach so dynamic. So I hope that clears up this idea, because I want people to really understand that. Like, this approach, it's about the outcome, not the condition.